SJ. Welcome to Muskogee Radio, your weekly source for tribal and community news, interesting guests and discussions, plus a local events calendar. SJ Stongo, Gary Fife, Jaho Jifkidos, Muskogee Radio, Mabo Hedjidowetskis. Today we have a special program for you. We will be hearing a debate between two of our local political candidates. Scott Fetgetter and Chandler Torbett will be talking about local issues here important to Muskogee. Your producer today is Darren DeLon, and your moderator and guest speaker there is our own Jason Salzman. Good morning, Jason.
Good morning, sir. Thanks for having me as part of this special show, and I want to thank especially our two candidates today in studio with us, Mr. Torbett, Mr. Fetgetter, and especially, at a time where information is key, and getting that out there and allowing us to have it on our outlets is a super plus. And this will also be airing this weekend on our television program too. So guys, thanks so much for being here.
Thank you for having us.
Yeah, thank you for the opportunity.
Now, basically, I'm going to give you 2 minutes for each response, and Darren will kind of hold up if you need help with the time and everything like that. But you're both going to get the same questions that we basically just formulated, and you're both going to get a chance to, respond, everything like that. If you want to respond to an answer that's been given by your opponent, you can do that. You don't have to. It's not required or anything like that. But there is going to be a little bit less time for that. So kind of make that quick if you have a response. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get started. We didn't really do an order or anything like that for who wanted to go first. So I guess we can start with you, Scott,
okay.
Being the incumbent in District 16, which is what we are both running for here. You as the Republican candidate, Torbett as the Democratic candidate. First off, just give us your platform that you're running on.
Well, I ran my first race, finishing up my first term in 2016 was when I was elected. And, I ran on an education platform, as well as, we need to grow the economy in our rural communities. I appreciate everything that goes on in Oklahoma City and Tulsa as far as, the economy booming, but in our rural areas, we're suffering, and we've been suffering for most of my entire life. And so, my platform has always been to work on fixing our education problems and fixing our economic development problems and listening to what my constituents are telling me they want to be done on those issues. We had massive budget problems that we had to fix as well. So those are the three things that I've focused all of my efforts on over the past couple of years.
Mr. Torbett, same to you. Just give us your platform rundown there and for running for this office.
Sure, thank you. The reason I'm running for the office is because I know that Oklahoma is a state with a lot of potential. And I think that for many years the potential has gone unrealized because there hasn't been a longer-term vision in place for enacting policies. It's been a lot of tax cuts and short-sighted cuts. And so I'm kind of running with the platform that we need to build a new foundation, because I think the foundation of prosperity in this state has been decimated over the last 10 years especially. And I think it starts with public education. That has to be our top priority. I think that talking about other things, especially talking about economic development and some of these other issues, without focusing on education is putting the cart before the horse. We've got to have a skilled and educated workforce in order to get businesses to come here. So education has to be number one. We've cut per pupil spending by more than any other state in the country, and that we've got to reverse that trend. And then another thing another piece of my platform is infrastructure spending. I think that we need to rebuild our brick and mortar infrastructure in order to incentivize companies to want to come here so they can move their products safely, and also cyber infrastructure. Where I live out in the country, I don't have quality high-speed internet access. If I'm running a business out there, I'm at a huge disadvantage. So those two things are going to be key and will be things that I fight for in order to make Oklahoma as prosperous and to achieve the full potential that I know we can get to.
All right, thank you. And we'll stay with you, Chandler, for the first actual question. Since you went second there. So the first question is, you guys have spent time out amongst the constituency, obviously, campaigning. You go to these different communities, things like that. In District 16, let's just talk about District 16 right now, because we can get broad and talk about Oklahoma all we want. But in District 16, what is the most pressing concern for you all, or needs the most attention?
I think it's education still. There were steps taken in the previous legislative session to increase teacher pay, which is desperately needed and very well deserved. But it only put a fraction. It put, I think, another $50 million into per pupil spending, which doesn't even put us a fraction of the way back to our 2008 per pupil spending levels. So we have 60,000 more students than 2008, but hundreds of millions of dollars less in the classroom. So that's still a pressing issue. It's still, that's what people are talking about. That's what concerns people. There was money that was left on the table. There was revenue that was left on the table that wouldn't have asked the middle class to foot the bill for it. So I think that those are the things that people are still talking about, especially in and around District 16. And lately, I've been hearing a little more about the incarceration issues. Oklahoma is #1 in the world in incarceration now, both males and females. That's a big concern for people. It also costs us a lot of money, and it takes people out of our society that could be productive. So that's something that I see as a concern. I actually work as the staff attorney for the Muskogee Nation's reintegration program. So it's something I see day to day, the issues that these people face upon release from incarceration. And I know that there are things that we can do legislatively to help that transition, to help them become productive members of society, and to lower the cost to taxpayers of incarcerating people.
Mr. Fetgetter, same question. What's the most pressing concern that you've seen, heard about, or just feel naturally yourself that's facing District 16?
Most of the time when I'm visiting with constituents around the district, 2 years ago, the two concerns were education and the budget. This time around has been a little bit different in that we're hearing more about rural health care issues and the incarceration rates. I agree with Chandler on. Those are two areas where the legislature has got to come together and work to fix and solve those issues as well. It's one thing to have a single issue, basically platform of education. It's a whole other thing when you actually step into that office. Every day of the week is a completely different day. You could be 1 minute talking about education issues with somebody, and the very next minute you're helping a mother with a DHS problem, and the next minute you're helping a veteran with a health care issue. So we have to work on a multitude of issues. A lot of times I get asked, what is your number one priority? Well, for me, the number one priority is to make sure that Oklahoma gets put back on the right track. One of the areas I agree with Chandler on is Oklahoma has the potential to be one of the greatest states in the union, but we haven't had leadership, and it's gone. I hear this 10-year number all the time, the last 8 to 10 years. That's just not true. Oklahoma's been on a bad track for 20 plus years, 30 years. In fact, during the teacher walkout, I was watching videos from 1965. And in 1965, they were having the exact same issues that we are having today. So to say the cart before the horse, which I hear regularly, is just not the case. You have to work, you have to multitask, you have to do multiple things at the same time. So you can't focus on one over the other. You have to focus on several issues at the same time.
Thank you, sir. Moving on, and you'll go first now, Mr. Fetgetter. In politics, there doesn't have to be personal. It doesn't have to be personal. It just has to be policy, things like that. But the fact is, people do go, and they have to either put down Scott Fetgetter or Chandler Torbett. So you're running for a reason. Can you tell us why you think that you are a better choice for the people of District 16 than this candidate, Chandler Torbett?
Well, I never intended on running for office. That wasn't something that I had ever planned in my life. So it was kind of just some people asked me to run. And, I've raised my children. I now have grandchildren since I've been elected. And I want to see Oklahoma be prosperous. One of the things that bothers me most about the youth of today, when I talk to them, it seems as though they've lost the ability to dream. They've lost the ability to dream about having a home. They've lost the ability to dream about owning a vehicle and having a family and having a good career path. Those things are important in society. And I just believe that I have the experience and I have the ability to communicate with people well enough and create networks with people to get things done. My whole life has been spent around I have to get it done or nobody else will. So that's why I think that I'm, the most qualified for the job, is because I will create a situation where District 16 has representation for the whole district, not just a few, but for the whole district. I don't care if you're a Democrat, I don't care if you're a Republican, I don't care if you're an independent. I care about Oklahoma, and that's all I care about.
Thank you, sir. Chandler, same question to you. You get in this race, you're against an incumbent. Why are you going to be the better choice in this particular race?
Yeah, so, my family's been in this area for 100 years, literally 100 years, and we're here to stay. I was fortunate enough to buy a house here earlier this year with my fiance, so we're invested here. We're here to stay, and I want to fight to make Oklahoma the state that I know it can become. And the reason that I think that I'm the better choice to do that is because I think that I've got some fresh ideas, kind of some new takes on things, and in my profession, in my practice as an attorney, I see these issues play out day to day on the ground every single day with my clients. I have an understanding of how these laws impact people day to day. I have an understanding of how these laws interact with each other. So if there's something that's conflicting with other laws, or if there's a law that doesn't make any sense because the way it plays out is detrimental to people or detrimental to Oklahoma getting on a path to prosperity, I have an understanding and an experience in dealing with those laws that I think makes me uniquely qualified in this race, and the most qualified to do this with my legal background and my experience in running 2 businesses here in town. I think that I have a broad range of experience to bring to the table and some legal knowledge and background to back that up.
All right, thank you. Chandler, we'll stay with you for the next one. We've already talked about in this debate here about how we're low in a lot of statistics, whether it be health, education, job creation, things like that. Low statistically around the country. Mm-hmm. We could go on and on all day about how it happened, but what's sort of a way that we can turn that around? Do you have any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think that, just like Scott said, it's not going to be a single issue where we turn the tide. I mean, it's a whole, in my mind, it's rebuilding that foundation towards prosperity. If you have to build a new house, you start with the foundation. And I think that, we start with education, get our classroom, get our per pupil funding back up, make sure our teachers are some of the best paid in the nation, equip them with the resources and the technology so their classrooms are the envy of the nation. We want teachers flocking to Oklahoma, not out of it. And I think that goes a long ways. That's a very long-term investment. I think it's the greatest long-term investment we can make is public education. And second, it goes back to the infrastructure thing. We have to start fresh, and I think that a lot of that is wrapped up in the budget issues that we've had. We've run deficits. We actually are in a surplus this year, which is good news. But we've run deficits for years and years and years because we've continued to cut tax rates on the massive oil and gas companies, and we've continued to cut the top tax rate, and we've continued making short-sighted cuts that were undercutting our future ability to prosper. So I think if we want to start pushing our way back up on those lists, we need to get our priorities straight and realize that, those tax cuts, they're not trickling down to Okmulgee, Oklahoma. It's just not working that way. They're not trickling down to District 16. So it's time to make sure everybody's is paying their fair share, including the massive oil and gas companies who, for the last 10 years, have really kind of made off pretty good. And I think getting our priorities right and rebuilding that foundation is how we get back to the top of those lists.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Fetgetter,
I'd like to
repeat.
respond if that's okay.
Please respond.
So Chandler's correct in that, these things are going to take time. There's no single issue that's going to happen right now. But, the one thing, he made a statement last night that actually just blew my mind. He said it was ridiculous to talk about economic development until you fix the education problems. Our education problems have been going on for decades. And we can't allow mom and dad to not have an opportunity to have a good paying job right here in Okmulgee, Oklahoma. We can't wait decades to try to fix these issues. Infrastructure. ODOT is one of the only groups out there that they have an 8-year plan, and that 8-year plan is moving forward. We had 1,200 plus deficient bridges, and now we're down to a few hundred over the past years. So one of the visions and one of the things that we're doing as far as our agenda goes is we are trying to get other agencies to put together that same model of an 8-year plan so that we can see the direction we're headed.
All right, now a plan in your eyes for bringing us out of those low statistics.
Yeah, so to bring us out of those statistics for healthcare, for example, a lot of people want to talk about Medicaid expansion, and we can have those conversations, but there are other things that we can do. One is that we can take, in our rural communities, we don't have doctors anymore. We have a lot of nurse practitioners, PAs, those professions. So one thing we can do is give full practice authority to a nurse practitioner, for example, and the nurse practitioners have petitioned the legislature for several years to do this, so that they could prescribe just a few things. Because right now what's happening is the doctors are charging the nurse practitioners a large sum of money annually to write prescriptions for them. Well, that doctor has never seen me. They don't know my name. All they know is the nurse practitioner calls in a prescription and says, hey, will you sign off on this? And they get paid thousands of dollars a year. That's one thing that we can do to help with our immediate needs right here in our rural communities. Education, we have to go out and recruit and retain the best teachers possible. Why aren't we utilizing our retired educators and trying to bring some of them out of retirement? If you come out of retirement as an educator, you make about half of what a regular teacher makes because of the retirement plans. So why aren't we looking at, paying those people more? They have the experience, they've been in the system, they know the system, and they need to come out and help us through this time. I remember back in the 90s, whenever, unemployment was really low, that's when companies began to give better incentives, better insurance, more paid time off, more sick leave, and those types of things. Those are things that we can do immediately. We're not going to fix these problems overnight. But to say that economic development is ridiculous to discuss at this point it doesn't make sense to me.
Thank you, sir. Chandler, real quick, a chance to respond to Mr. Fetgetter's response.
Yeah, first, just on the infrastructure spending, in the last 3 or 4 years, there's been almost $300 million taken out of the county roads and bridges funds. And if you go talk to the county commissioners around here, that's a huge chunk of their budget. So these are the type of cuts that I'm talking about that the legislature has been doing that are short-sighted, and they're having to rob Peter to pay Paul just to pay the bills. So I just want to respond to that point about the infrastructure. And I would object a little to the characterization of me saying it was ridiculous to talk about economic development. I just think it's putting the cart before the horse to make that our focus.
Sure.
But that was what you said. It was ridiculous, and you did say that it was the cart before the horse.
Yeah.
So that's why I'm just repeating. That's why it blew my mind when you said it, because I didn't expect that from you.
Thank you. We'll go into the next question. In 2016, as recent as 2016, numbers, GDP, real low in Oklahoma. So let's talk about job creation. What is your ideas for job growth in Oklahoma, Mr. Fetgetter?
So a couple of things that I've done since I've actually been in the legislature is, one, we ran in my first session, I ran the extension of the aerospace tax credit. We took it from, sunsetting and then going to 4 years, where we actually moved it out 8 years. One of the things that companies need whenever they are looking at your area or your state is they need certainty. They need stability. So we took that out 8 years. Incidentally, since we ran that legislation, we took aerospace from the number 3 economic driver in the state to the 2nd economic driver in the state, surpassing agriculture. So whether we like it or not, people like to use the buzzword corporate welfare, and there are bad tax incentives out there for businesses. The wind incentives were horrible the way they were structured and set up, and it cost us millions of dollars. As far as oil and gas goes, we raised the production tax 150% on the oil and gas companies over the past 2 years. So we have been taking those steps. But as far as moving forward, we have to offer incentives. We have to offer a qualified workforce. And I'm working with Dr. Path and some others in the aerospace industry right now to try to continue to educate. Right now in the aerospace industry, we're struggling to find technicians that come out of, whatever training program to fulfill the job need. So one of the things I'm doing is I'm working with Dr. Path at OSU IT. Everybody agrees that that's the perfect school for us to be able to train aerospace technicians. So, it is education, it's incentives, and it's a whole plethora of different things. By the way, the Department of Commerce is busier now than they've been in decades.
Thank you, sir. Mr. Torbett, same question. Your thoughts, ideas, plans, anything like that for job creation and bringing jobs to Oklahoma?
Yeah, I'm not at all opposed to certain incentives to attract businesses, to get them to bring manufacturing facilities to Oklahoma, specifically District 16. I think we have to be very careful with our incentives. There are a lot of incentives that the taxpayer will never get a return on their investment. So we have to be very careful to make sure the incentives are targeted and that there are multipliers from those incentives. So the jobs that come or the money that we're spending on those incentives is going to multiply into other streams of commerce, and there will be a ripple effect. So I'm not opposed to incentives at all. We just have to be careful with them, and that's a good way to address job growth. And additionally, I'm going to jump back to education. OSU IT, just like Scott said, we have one of the premier technical colleges anywhere in the nation. But in the last 2 years, since 2015, they've been cut by $3.5 million. They've had to cut 5 programs completely from the university. And that's hugely detrimental to our direct area, but also to the economic impact that OSU can make. Here in District 16, the Oklahoma Board of Regents estimates we get $4.53 on return on investment for every dollar we spend on education. That's a huge return on investment. And if we put that money back in education so that OSU IT or that green country can be fully utilized and can produce people who have these skills and know these technologies, that's going to help with job growth as well.
I'd like to quick response, and it's really not so much as a response but we've talked a couple of times now about the legislature has cut, the legislature has cut, the legislature has cut. The state of Oklahoma has been in a retraction period financially for 10 years. So whenever you're in a retraction period, there are going to be cuts. When you don't have the same amount of money today that you had yesterday, you have to cut spending. So where do you make those cuts? That's the question. And so that's why it's not because the legislature is up there just wanting to make cuts. It's because we've been in a retraction period. And I will agree that, the legislature several years ago made some bad moves in some of the cuts that they made.
If I could respond to that. The cuts to our budget we had to be made because the legislature cut taxes. We lowered the revenue that we were bringing in. The gross production tax, the historic rate is 7%. It was lowered to 2%, and there were certain incentives on some new wells. Our effective tax rate was 3.2%, making us the lowest of any oil and gas producing state in the nation. So, while our economy may have been in a retraction, it was exacerbated by the legislature's tax cuts on oil and gas companies, and they cut the income tax rate on the top earners.
So can I respond?
Please, quick.
So actually, the way the gross production tax has worked is prior to the 2% rate for 36 months, which we like to say that because that's when Republicans took control of the House. It's a very partisan issue. We had a 1% rate for 48 months. And what happened was, I believe it was 2014, the legislature came in and they did away with the excuse me, the 1% rate for 48 months, and they took it to a 2% rate for 36 months and made it a permanent tax at that point. So what started out as an incentive at 1%, it went to an actual tax at 2%. So this narrative that the Republicans cut, big oil is wrong. They doubled the tax, and they took away some of the years, and we fixed that last year as well.
Yeah, I just would reiterate that the historic rate is 7%, and we're still not back to 7% because Republicans didn't want to put it back to 7%. It was a dog fight between Republicans and Democrats to get it to 5%, which is where it's landed now. And I would support restoring it to its historic rate of 7%, still making us one of the lowest in the nation.
That is incorrect.
Which part?
The gross production tax in Oklahoma being at 5% is the lowest in the nation. We compete with Texas, which is at 4.6 on gross production tax. Now, ours is 5% now for 36 months. Texas is 4.6 on crude from the day they spud the well to the day it runs dry. Ours goes from 5 to 7. So that's crude. Now, 7.5 is the number we hear about gross production tax in Texas, and that 7.5, that's on gas. So there's different rates. You cannot compare apples to apples between Texas and Oklahoma, how you tax the oil industry.
Texas also puts ad valorem tax on oil and gas industry, whereas in Oklahoma we don't do that. So the number that I refer to is the effective tax rate, essentially, not a specific tax rate on one type of oil. It's the effective tax rate overall on oil and gas production.
And the number that you quoted is from a 2016 study.
All right, thank you. Let's go to a question that, we've talked about education, we've talked about jobs, everything like that. We are sitting right now and looking across the street at the council house, and we are sitting in the capital city, the Muskogee Creek Nation, but other districts also share tribal boundaries with tribes, everything like that. And the state government, certainly works with tribes, certainly gets monies from tribes that come in. I believe it's to Chandler first, Mr. Torbett first. The question would be, is the Oklahoma government being good stewards and good partners with the tribes? Can we do more? What do you see the relationship like as we work with tribes to bring in compact numbers, things like that? But what's your overall thoughts on that? 2 minutes.
Yeah, so it's a big question for 2 minutes, but I'll do my best. I think that there's absolutely more that we can do. I don't believe that the state has been good stewards of the money that the tribes have been paying in exclusivity fees and some of these other fees from gaming, because a lot of that was supposed to go to education. That was kind of the line that got a lot of that passed and got the people okay with it. But when that money came in, the state would pull the other money out and kind of supplant the money and move stuff around. So I think that the state needs to be a little more honest with how that money is used. The tribes paid over 1.1 billion in exclusivity fees since 2006. That's billion with a B. So the tribes, the tribal state relationship is incredibly important. And I say that as a proud citizen of the Muskogee Nation, and somebody who spent a lot of time studying tribal law in law school and who has an understanding for tribal sovereignty. There's also a case at the Supreme Court right now that's going to really, it may change the nature of the relationship between the state and the Muskogee Creek Nation. So that's something that we're going to have to watch. And I think that partnership between the tribe and the state is incredibly important for both parties. It's something that's mutually beneficial. It's not a zero-sum game. The compact it may be renegotiated in 2020. Mm-hmm. So it's a really important time right now. And it's important that we approach it with the win-win mentality. What's good for the tribe is good for the state, and what's good for the state is good for the tribe. And so having that working partnership is incredibly important. And I think that I could act as an effective liaison between the tribe and the state, given my understanding of tribal sovereignty, tribal law, and then my role as a state legislator if I were to be elected.
Thank you. Mr. Fetgetter, same question. How are we working with tribes? How does it work for the state? And what's the potential of it? Just your general thoughts on working with tribes, specifically in your district, Muskogee Creek Nation, just because you know that's home, everything like that.
Yeah, so I'm a citizen of the Choctaw Nation, and I represent the Muskogee Creek Nation. So I have an interesting perspective in that, the Muskogee Creek Nation is not politically involved at the level that I would like to see them involved at the state level. Now, the Choctaw Nation, the Chickasaw Nation, the Cherokee Nation, all three are of those tribes I work very closely with, and we just worked on the ball and dice issue, and I was a leader in helping get other legislators to work on that. I think it's extremely important for our state and our local communities to work in partnership with the tribes. I look at Durant as an example. I remember I lived in Durant several years ago, and when I lived in Durant, they had a lot of the same demographics that we did at the time. It was very poor, very few jobs. And the the Choctaw Nation came together with the community leaders, the county leaders, and they began to work together. And if you've seen the explosive growth that's gone on within the Choctaw Nation, as well as just the community, through economic development, they have great school systems down there. They're a shining example of when people come together and work together on issues. They can overcome the problems in their communities. Now, when it comes to, my role as a legislator, it's very limited on what I can do. I can help with the ball and dice legislation. I can help with, sports book and those issues. The compacts are going to be negotiated by the new governor if they're opened back up. But I've been a strong advocate. I'm supported. My campaign is heavily supported by all three, the Choctaws, the Chickasaw, and the Cherokee Nation, because of the work I've done.
Thank you, sir. Let's go to something that I really like to ask in settings like this, debates like this, and we'll start with you, Representative Fetgetter. Tell me something you like or really impresses you about your opponent. Actually,
I like Chandler, and I'm hoping that when this is all said and done, Chandler and I can be friends, because he's very accomplished, at this point in his life, and he has a lot of great things to offer, and that's what we need in our community. Our community is plagued with, having people that live here but don't participate in the community. So, I don't have any problem whatsoever. We see some things differently, but I think at the end of the day, we see things more alike than not, and we can, hopefully after we get through this and, over the next few weeks, it's, we've got to separate ourselves and distinguish who we are for this role. But I've known Chandler's family my whole life. My family moved here in '72. My wife's family's been here 100 years too. She's a fourth generation Okmulgee, and so we're both deeply tied to the community, and I think he's an outstanding person from what I know at this point, and I just hope that after the campaign's over, maybe Chandler and I can go. I'll go back down to the local and we can sit down and have a coffee and talk about things that we can work on to better our community together.
Chandler, same thing. Something you like about Scott and things that impresses you about him.
Yeah, and I appreciate that, Scott. Yeah, we were friends before this campaign started, and I fully anticipate we'll be friends afterwards. And something that I appreciate about Scott throughout this race has been our ability to disagree on certain policy points. We can have civil conversation, which is something that's a bit of a lost art in the United States these days. There's a lot of incivility, and that's something that I greatly appreciate about Scott. At the end of the day, we'll always be able to shake each other's hands, look each other in the eyes, and be friends. And I also am impressed with Scott's ability to it's a networking ability. I don't know if that's the right word for it, but to kind of move between groups and to comfortably talk to different groups of people and kind of that social networking, kind of bringing people together type thing is something that has impressed me. So
thank you.
Thank you, guys. Last thing, and this will wrap us up, and we'll let you go first here, Mr. Torbett, and finish us off. But just take 2 minutes and kind of wrap up everything. The sort of last thing that you want the listeners of this program and the people that are joining us today to remember about Chandler Torbett and his campaign for District 16.
Sure. I think we've covered a lot of topics, and so what I would kind of end on is where I started. I want people to know that the reason I'm running is because I believe in Oklahoma, and I believe in the future of Oklahoma and the prosperity that I know that we can achieve if we get our priorities right. I think that there's been not enough fighting for the middle class at the Capitol. I think that somebody's got to go up there and fight for middle class and working class Oklahomans, and not nearly as much to the special interests. I think the special interest voices at the Capitol are way louder than the constituent voices, and that's a huge problem. So I want people to know, and I want listeners to know, and voters in District 16 to know that their voices will always be louder to me than any special interest. I will always fight for the middle class, the working class people, because that's what comprises the majority of District 16, and that's how I was brought up. I was raised in that environment, so I know what that's like. And that's kind of what I want people to know is I'm looking to go fight for them, represent them, but fight for them and fight for the prosperity that I know that we can achieve. Just if we rebuild that foundation, properly fund education, fix our infrastructure, get our incarceration rates down. There are a lot of projects that need to be worked on at the state level, and so I would ask that people have put their faith in me and put their belief in me that I have the ability and the knowledge to go up to the Capitol and do those things.
All right, thank you, sir. Mr. Fetgetter, leave us today with 2 minutes of final thoughts from you and just what you would like the people out there to know about Scott Fetgetter.
Well, first of all, I want everybody to know that it's been a great honor in my life to go to the Capitol and serve for the past 2 years. If you followed my newspaper articles, if you follow me on Facebook or social media, one of the things that I think we lack in our communities is communication, people understanding how the Capitol works. And so I do a lot of things to try to help our constituents understand what's going on at the Capitol. I think I've been noted as the first person to ever do a Facebook Live video from the chamber floor, and I did it because it was an important issue and I wanted people to be able to watch it. So for me, it's been a great honor, and I've started some work that I would like to finish. As far as, middle class Oklahomans, the median income in Okmulgee County is $29,000 a year. The last thing I want to do is hurt our community. I want to rebuild our rural communities. I'm an advocate at the Capitol. Rural versus urban is a real thing, and I am a loud voice at the Capitol. And the good thing about me being at the Capitol as a loud voice, the majority party sets the agenda for the session. I'm in the majority party, which means I have a seat at the table, so I can effectively, loudly, and clearly and concisely talk about that agenda and talk about how it affects our district. For the first time in years, and you could go to the Capitol and ask, for the first time in years since I was elected, Okmulgee County, District 16, our part of Wagner County, Muskogee County, and Tulsa County, we have a voice, and we are on the forefront of everybody's mind at the Capitol at this point, and it's because I went up there and I had a loud voice for District 16, and I ask you to vote for me on November 6th.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Torbett. I appreciate both of you all. Scott Fetgetter, of course, the incumbent, and Chandler Torbett, the challenger for the District 16 race. And as you said, November 6th, it's coming up, so you guys got a little bit more hustling to do. We'll probably see you out at a lot of different events and things like that, but hopefully the campaign isn't wearing on you guys too much. I know it's a busy season, but I want to thank both of you because as a constituent, as just a voter, somebody that's just out there, that's going to vote for either one of you, I know what toll it is on you and your families to be able to step up and provide a public service. There's scrutiny, there's long hours, there's people constantly at you. So I just want to thank you guys for stepping up and doing something tough for the people of Oklahoma. Thank you both for coming in today as well.
Thank you for having us.
Thanks for the opportunity.
You bet. All right, we're going to take a quick break here. You're listening to The Brew, and you're listening to the Muskogee Radio program.
I started doing it when I was 11. I wanted to be just like my big brother. And some of my friends were already doing it. We got hooked fast. I just can't get enough. I'm Jacob, and I'm addicted to playing the drums.
There's lots of stuff that makes it cool to be Native. Doing meth isn't one of them. Find something better to do. Check out ncai.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Hear that? That's the sound of hope being killed by meth. Methamphetamine use is causing huge problems in our community. Hear that? That's the sound of something you can do about it. Events like rodeo, res ball, and family time can help keep kids away from meth.
Talk to your kids. Keep our culture alive. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Learn more at ncai.org.
Who am I? Am I Native? I don't want people assuming things because I'm Indian. I just want to be me. But how do I live in two worlds? Some guys just check out by doing meth. But that ain't for me. Because I see my family, my friends, my drum making, my future. There are a lot of cool things about being who I am. And meth isn't one of them.
Learn more at ncai.org. A message from the Partnership for a Drug-Free America and the National Congress of American Indians.
Welcome back to Muskogee Radio here on The Brew. We just had our first political debate.
Pretty good radio, I thought,
Yes.
Not your run-of-the-mill stuff. Those guys actually, a lot of good things to say, and a healthy debate, I thought. Really respectful, It's
Very
good.
Comfortable presence on there.
Sure.
I enjoyed it. I mean, I really did. I mean, it was just the way they were talking. I mean, they had several, well, not say several disagreements, but they had a couple of rebuttals on one question, and that was really, really good, and they were able to handle that in a fashionable way. They didn't interrupt each other. I mean, when they asked for the rebuttal, they signaled us, and I really, really liked how they did that. I mean, we didn't have, interrupting during another person's talking.
Right. And here's the way I look at things. If they don't have disagreements or don't have things that they see differently, why are we even having a campaign? Why are we even having a race?
Exactly.
They both ought to be the same person. So it to me, it defeats the purpose of even having a debate when there is no dissension, there is no, well, hold on just a second, I'd like to challenge what you've just said, because the people out there have to have a choice. They don't have to have a unilateral one, oh, they both are for education? Great. Oh, they're both for job creation? Great. Everyone is for education. And I've not ever heard one politician come on and say, one thing we need to take some money away from is education. So, I mean, those things can get a little bit contrite and everything like that. But I thought, as far as what we're trying to do here, respectful, topic-driven, definitely two distinct platforms, two distinct parties. I think you saw a lot of that in some of their comments. So I thought it was pretty good radio.
Very good.
I would have to echo what everyone has said so far. I thought it was a very good sign that they took it upon themselves to disagree like that. Kind of wondered whether or not they would get out of hand with it, but no, they handled it quite gentlemanly and made their differences well known. So I think the listeners got a pretty good chance to find out where these guys are coming from.
I think if anything, it's kind of inspired me to go to their website or their Facebook page or whatever and just kind of investigate a little more in depth on what they plan on doing, because like you said, I mean, everybody's for education, everybody's for lower crime, creating jobs, but the devil's in the details. How are you going to do that? How do you plan to do that? I mean, everybody wants it, but I mean, if it were that easy, it would be done already. So how do you plan on doing it? So I think if anything, all the listeners, like you said, I mean, there has to be two opposing views, which there was. So now I'm going to go. It, like I said, it just inspired me to go look and investigate and see what those opposing views actually are.
And you never know on the things right there. I mean, one listener might have a dead set on one candidate. Well, maybe listening to the debate, it might be a toss-up now, or they might be leaning towards another one. So, the questions that we had were probably not regular questions that they hear all the time. I mean,
yeah, and it's nice too to see two House of Representatives candidates be asked about how are we being stewards of tribal monies at the state level. Because what I thought's interesting here, you had a Creek citizen and a Choctaw citizen, both, that's cool in and of itself, but the fact that they're citizens of two distinct tribes, and they also understand that those tribal monies go, and there's sometimes, this is going to be for education, but you can definitely see at the legislative level in Oklahoma that there has been cases of, well, we've got a shortfall, let's fall back on some of this Indian money. You know what I mean? I just think that it's an interesting topic to look at.
Absolutely, and with the economic wallop that tribes are now giving to the state, what is it now?
Billions.
That's a
with
huge chunk of change there, and if no one ever talked to us before, they darn sure are paying attention, and now we got to know where these guys sit in relation. I'm glad they mentioned in passing the Murphy case, which could alter that relationship between tribes and the state of Oklahoma drastically.
Well, just think about it. I mean, 20 years ago, if a Oklahoma legislative candidate was asked a question about tribes, they'd almost be able to dismiss it because everybody listening would be like, why are they asking about tribes? Why are they asking about tribes? Now, every single debate that there is, you have to ask about tribes because of compact deals. Money's coming in. Billions of dollars. And like Darren said, with a B. That's no small potatoes when you're talking about a state that, now, something to add up here, right?
Mm-hmm.
People go, state of Oklahoma sagging behind very much so than other states economically, but they have a gaming industry that's neck and neck with Nevada, who's, whatever, I mean, it's just amazing. I mean, you think about all the monies that flow through, especially on all these casinos at the borders. I mean, we're getting money from different states, and still, so it's a legitimate question, and one, like I said, 20 years ago, been laughed at to say it or ask it.
One thing, another good thing, and I was glad they both decided to come on here and do this. I mean, because yes, we brought up the thing that dealt with tribal issues and tribal funds. But another good thing about it is, like, District 16 just does not represent the Muskogee Creek Nation; it represents all citizens. And I'm glad to hear both. They got American Indian heritage. They got Creek blood and Choctaw blood. But like I said, one of the main reasons why we were all wanting to do this is because we wanted to get the listeners to hear their platforms.
Yeah.
And not just Muskogee Creeks, not just the Choctaws here, not just Cherokees, but every single citizen who do vote. We want them to be able to hear what they're doing. Yeah.
Well, we're Oklahoma citizens. We're all proud of our tribal heritage, our tribal citizenship as well. But I mean, everybody sitting in here, raise your hand if you don't pay taxes to the state of Oklahoma.
Exactly.
There's another question. How many of you guys live in District 16?
All three of us.
All three of us.
Yeah, all three of us. Well, you live in District 16 too, Gary.
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean,
one thing that
I'm not going to tell anybody where.
One thing I found interesting was, again, Mr. Fetgetter, he said, Oklahoma's been on this road for decades, and that's not what's been put out there. What's been put out there is, again, just a certain political party for the last 5 to 10 years has driven us down this road. And again, according to Mr. Fetgetter, and a lot of other people, I mean, we've been heading down this road for a long time, a lot longer than the past couple of election cycles.
Yeah, it's interesting. You never want to. I think it's in any time that a state has the struggles that we have, I think it's kind of naive to expect that it just happened overnight or in 8 years or because one party took over or anything like that. I never like to get into that. I like to look at the fact that how did we get here? And it took, like you said, years and years and years. And sort of any time a party kind of jumps on another party, I don't care what party it is, anytime they jump on another party, you kind of go, I mean, that's probably just a talking point. And it happens in politics. But you look at that and you go, well, what really did get us here? And there it has to be years and years of bad policy.
Right. Now, the points you made, both of them focused on, and I think the top three that I got out of this was, of course, education. We just saw what a massive mess that is. And with people, qualified teachers leaving to go in so they can take care of their families. And then infrastructure, that old sagging bridges.
Nice.
Yes, highways and roads that are in horrible condition. They're starting to make some progress there, but it's still there. And then, of course, rural health.
We should transit to another topic.
Go ahead.
Okay, no. Yeah, you're right.
And one thing that they both brought up too was the.
Throw you under the bus.
We're only 30 minutes away from Tulsa, but so. There's Tulsa and then there's like Jinx and Glenpool. Those are big. They're still well populated. Go about 15 minutes south again. Okmulgee, 15-20 minutes south of Okmulgee. So they really brought up that key thing, that rural versus urban. Yeah. And that's what I really enjoyed hearing that part. What can they do? And Fetgetter said he was going to be the voice. Chandler said he was still continue to be that voice. But it's like it's a constant battle between rural versus urban.
That's a great point too, because like you said, Fetgetter says I'm the voice of rural, and then Chandler says I'm talking to a lot of pissed off county commissioners. You know what I mean? So it's like those guys, you can tell that they've got a pulse on rural, and as you said, Darren, there's a lot of rural in this district. Mm-hmm. There really is. I mean, you ain't seen rural till you seen rural. A bumper sticker. Nobody take that. So again, just to wrap it up a little bit, that's why it's so important that people listen to Muskogee Radio and come on our outlets and everything like that, because here you had just an amazing opportunity to just straight from these two guys themselves to make a informed decision on who you want to be your representative if you live in District 16. What better avenue to get that information that you need could be better than just sitting there and watching that right there or listening to that right there. I mean, those guys, we covered it all. We covered a little bit of everything that they wanted to discuss, and they even had a chance to go back at each other. So I thought it was fantastic.
I'm glad we were able to get that question about working with tribes. We got to put put them on the spot and hold their feet to the fire, saying the Muskogee Creek Nation is one of the biggest employers in this area, and you guys are going to have to start dealing with us on eyeball to eyeball level. Not necessarily a bad, tough relationship. It could be a very cordial, cooperative kind of thing. It's up to you to bring that point of view into the legislature. There are many Oklahoma legislators who are still fairly ignorant of the relationship between tribes and the state. So it's good for us to kind of stick them on the spot there and say, okay, well, what are your thoughts on it?
Yeah. And I think they brought up a couple of good points too about incarceration, and just the way laws are made and how they actually affect people when put into practice, law versus law, policy versus law, things like that. I mean, I was watching something last night, and I'll just say it, the First 48. I don't know if anybody watches it. Yeah. I love that show, but there's a lot of them in Tulsa now. But I was watching something last night, and a guy strangles a woman, with the cord. And at the end of the show, it's like he was convicted of second-degree manslaughter and 4 years in prison. I was like, you strangled somebody with the cord, 4 years in prison. I bet there's somebody sitting in jail for the last 25 years for having a blunt on them. You know what I mean? Yeah. I mean, it's just ridiculous that some of the policies and laws in Oklahoma, and to me, saying we incarcerate more people, and our prison business is booming. Is the worst thing you could say. I mean, prison business is booming. Come on.
You know, like a couple of months ago, that's whenever Oklahoma's always been the number one for female incarceration.
Mm-hmm.
And
Good point.
here a couple of months ago, it even surpassed Louisiana for number one in male incarceration. So what Mr. Fetgetter or one of the gentlemen here today mentioned, I mean, they pointed it out that we are number one in the world. For incarcerated people. Mm-hmm. And one thing that just always boggled my mind, I mean, I've heard it on the news, and I've never really heard anybody come out like just, I mean, yeah, that's a talking point. They'll point that out. No, we're going to change that. But again, I have yet to see anyone, you know, kind of elaborate on the how. The how
Right.
are we going to, you know? I mean, this marijuana thing, like, just for instance, the first person to ever get stopped, she had a medical marijuana card. This happened like a couple of days ago. She had a medical.
She got taken in.
Yeah, she got taken in. She had marijuana on her, had the card, but because there are no dispensaries
In operation.
in operation yet,
yeah.
she got detained. So
Yeah.
like that right there, I mean, again, that's just a small little microcosm of what's going on. I mean, that lady, with all the manpower, time, the time that she spent, the time that she may have missed work or whatever, everything, it boggles my mind. And finally somebody's talking about it.
And now she's probably going to take a nice little ride through the system.
Yeah.
But as everybody out there knows, most people that take a little ride through the system
It's
get
a
caught
spider
up in
web.
there.
It's a spider web, and
You betcha.
yeah.
You bet.
You know, it's odd that I keep thinking it might have been a lot easier for her to go underground and
Yeah.
go on to the black market drug system, so to speak, and she'd have had what she needed and not have to go through all these steps. But she was going the legal road.
Trying to, anyway. Yeah.
We're about at a point where we need to kick in some community announcements here, folks. So we thank you all for listening and hope you enjoyed that debate and the reporters rambling here. First of all, this Sunday it's Family Fun Day with the Tulsa Oilers at the BOK Center. The action kicks off at 4:05 p.m. when the Oilers take on the Allen Americans. Get ready for speed, fights, and glass-rattling thrills. Bring the kids to skate with the players after the game. Buy tickets today by phone or text 918-632-7825 or online at TulsaOilers.com and get ready for a face-paced family fun day with the Tulsa Oilers.
Fall Wellness Fair will be coming up at the Muskogee Nation Omniplex on October 27th from 10 to 3. Events going out, prizes, costume contests, carnival games. It is a free event and open to the public. So October 27th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. Come on out.
Muskogee Nation Youth Council, they're sponsoring the Socktober. That's happening throughout the month of October, and they're just asking for donations of socks, other essential items that would be given to homeless people, and these are personal hygiene things. For more information, you can call 918-549-2557.
Do you have to be homeless to get some of those socks? I got holes in them. No. The Muskogee Creek Nation Department of Health is moving the mobile flu clinic around. It's on tour, and they're playing all their favorite hits. And it's coming up basically today. They'll be in Sapulpa from 11:30 to 1. And then they'll move over to Duck Creek Casino today from 2 to 4. That's out in Beggs, right off 75. And then in the next couple of days, tomorrow they'll be in Coweta from 11:30 to 1 at the Indian Community Center. And then at 2 to 4, they'll move over to the Coweta Indian Health Center. And then next week, they'll be in Okemah and Golden Pony right there off of I-40, 11 to 1 at Okemah and 2 to 4 at the Golden Pony. So if you need your flu shot, get on out there.
Hit me with your best shot.
Yes, yes.
Okay, if you're interested in learning the Muskogee language, there are classes on 2 levels, one for novices and beginners, and then others for a more intermediate class. They're ongoing now at the main tribal complex located in the Education and Training Building. And you don't have to do much. You don't have to enroll. If you just want to show up and take part, you're most welcome. Give them a call at 918-732-7649.
Next one coming up is the Muskogee Creek Nation Children Family Services Angel Tree. For more information on that one, please feel free to call Children and Family Services at 918-732-7869.
And again, the Muskogee Youth Council, they are asking you to save the date, November 3rd, from 6th to 8th graders and 9th to 12th graders. They are holding a games competition. It's Olympic-style events focusing on traditional Muskogee competitions. And again, that's November 3rd.
Okay, guys, that's everything. We had an ammo there.
Tribal and community news. Oh, just want to let everybody know there's Christmas bazaars and stuff coming up like that. So be on the lookout for that, and we'll keep you up to date on the radio program.
And, of course, on Muskogee Vision, too,
You
right?
bet, you bet.
Okay, we want to thank everyone, Mvskoke Mado, for listening with us, and we hope you enjoyed our debate here today. So thank you for being part of Muskogee Radio. You've been listening to Muskogee Radio. Join us again next week for more local, tribal, and community news and updates. Mado.